I still remember the exact moment my mother-in-law smiled at me, lifted her champagne glass, and destroyed what should have been the happiest day of my life. It wasn't a nervous joke. It wasn't a harmless wedding speech. It was a carefully planned public execution. She looked directly into my eyes, smiled sweetly, and said, "Everyone keeps congratulating my son, but let's be honest, he could have done much better." The ballroom went silent. I heard a fork hit the floor somewhere near the back tables. Even the wedding band stopped playing. My husband froze beside me, his hand still wrapped around mine, while over 100 guests stared at me, waiting to see if I'd cry. I didn't. Not then. Because what happened after that speech changed every single one of their lives forever. My name is Emily, and for years I believed kindness could earn love. I was wrong. Sometimes kindness only teaches cruel people that you're an easy target. I met Daniel when we were both 26. I worked as a financial analyst for a growing investment firm. My parents had raised me to believe that nothing came without hard work. I had paid for college myself, worked weekends, skipped vacations, and saved every extra dollar. I wasn't flashy. I drove a used Honda, rented a small apartment, and spent more time building my career than buying expensive handbags. Daniel was different. He was warm, funny, and the kind of man who made every room brighter just by walking into it. He worked as an architect and genuinely loved helping people. Our relationship was easy, except for one person. His mother, Margaret. The first time I met her, she hugged Daniel tightly before looking me up and down like she was inspecting damaged furniture. "So, this is Emily." I smiled. "It's wonderful to finally meet you." She nodded without smiling. "I imagine someone different." Daniel laughed awkwardly. "Mom..." "What? I'm just saying she's not what I expected." That should have been my warning. Instead, I convinced myself she just needed time. I spent 2 years trying to earn her approval. I brought homemade desserts to family dinners. I remembered her birthday. I helped organize her charity events. When she complained about technology, I spent hours fixing her computer. Nothing was enough. If I cooked, she criticized the seasoning. If I bought flowers, they were too ordinary. If I wore a dress, it was trying too hard. If I wore jeans, I didn't respect the family. Daniel always apologized afterward. "I'm sorry, she's always been like this." "I'll talk to her." I promise she doesn't mean it. But she always did. His younger sister, Chloe, only made things worse. She was 30 years old but behaved like an entitled teenager. The parents paid her rent, paid for her vacations, paid off her credit cards every year. Whenever she got into trouble, someone else fixed it. Whenever Daniel accomplished something, Margaret somehow turned the conversation toward Chloe. "Emily got promoted." "Oh, that's nice. Chloe is thinking about starting a fashion blog." "Daniel designed an award-winning building." "Wonderful. Chloe has excellent taste in furniture." Everything revolved around Chloe. One Sunday dinner, Margaret looked directly at me. "So when are you giving Daniel children?" I nearly choked on my drink. "Like, we're not in a rush." She frowned. "A woman has a biological clock." Daniel answered calmly. "We'll decide when we're ready." Margaret ignored him. "I just don't want my son wasting his best years." The room became painfully quiet. Then Chloe laughed. "Maybe she's focused on her career." Margaret shrugged dramatically. "Some women choose money over family." I wanted to leave. Instead, I smiled politely. Looking back, I wish I'd walked out that day. Things became worse after Daniel proposed. Margaret insisted on controlling every detail of our wedding. The flowers should be white. The venue is too modern. You don't need that photographer. I know what's best. When I gently reminded her Daniel and I were paying for everything ourselves, her expression changed instantly. "Oh, so now I'm just a guest." No, Margaret. It certainly sounds that way. She cried. Actually cried. Then called every relative to tell them I was excluding her from the wedding. Within 2 days, cousins I'd barely met were calling Daniel. Your mother is heartbroken. Emily should compromise. She's only trying to help. Daniel finally lost his patience. We're planning our wedding, not Mom's. Margaret stopped speaking to us for almost 3 weeks. Peace. Beautiful peace. Then she suddenly apologized. She invited me for lunch. I'm sorry, she said softly. I suppose I've had trouble accepting that my little boy is grown up. I believed her. That was my biggest mistake. She hugged me before we left. I want us to be family. I smiled through tears. So do I. The weeks leading to the wedding were surprisingly calm. Too calm. My maid of honor, Jessica, noticed it first. Doesn't this feel strange? What do you mean? Your future mother-in-law suddenly became an angel. I laughed. Maybe she's finally accepted us. Jessica shook her head. People don't change overnight. I wish I'd listened. Our wedding day arrived on a bright spring afternoon. Everything felt perfect. The ceremony was beautiful. Daniel cried when he saw me walking down the aisle. I cried too. When we exchanged vows, I believed every hardship had been worth enduring. The reception was elegant without being extravagant. Friends laughed. Children danced. Everyone seemed genuinely happy. Even Margaret smiled all evening. She complimented my dress. She hugged me after dinner. She even thanked my parents for raising such a lovely young woman. My mother whispered, maybe she's finally come around. I squeezed her hand. I think she has. I couldn't have been more wrong. Halfway through dinner, the DJ tapped the microphone. We'd now like to invite the groom's mother to say a few words. Guests applauded warmly. Margaret stood gracefully, lifting a crystal champagne flute. She looked like the picture of elegance. She smiled lovingly at Daniel. My precious son. Her voice cracked just enough to sound emotional. I've loved you since the moment I first held you. Everyone smiled. So many people told me today how lucky Emily is. She paused. But I think they've got it backwards. Several guests chuckled politely. I've always imagined Daniel marrying someone extraordinary. She slowly turned toward me. A doctor? Another pause. Or perhaps a successful attorney. People stopped smiling. Maybe someone from a respected family. Daniel's grip on my hand tightened. Mom. She ignored him. Instead, she laughed softly. He married someone ordinary. A few nervous laughs echoed through the room. She continued anyway. Emily is hardworking. She's pleasant. And I'm sure she'll make a perfectly acceptable wife. Perfectly acceptable. Like I was a second choice appliance. But if we're all being honest. She looked around the ballroom. My son settled. The silence became unbearable. Daniel stood. That's enough. Margaret held up one finger. I'm almost finished. She smiled sweetly again. I only hope Emily spends the rest of her life proving she deserved him. No one moved. No one breathed. My father looked furious. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Jessica whispered, did she really just say that? Daniel reached for the microphone. Give me that. Margaret stepped back dramatically. Oh dear. She looked at the guests. I was only speaking from the heart. Daniel's voice thundered through the ballroom. No. He took the microphone from her hands. You were trying to humiliate my wife. Margaret placed a hand over her chest. Now I'm the villain. You planned this. I gave a loving toast. You insulted Emily in front of everyone we love. She turned toward the guests again. Did I insult her, or did I simply tell the truth? Several relatives looked down at their plates. No one defended me. No one defended Daniel, except my father, who suddenly stood. His chair scraped loudly across the polished floor. He looked directly at Margaret and said, "If that's your definition of love, I'd hate to see what you call hate." Before anyone could respond, Chloe stood up with a smirk and said loudly enough for the entire ballroom to hear, "Honestly, Mom, just said what everyone was already thinking." The room erupted into shocked whispers. And then, just as I thought the night couldn't get any worse, the wedding coordinator hurried toward Daniel with a pale face, leaned into his ear, and whispered something that made every bit of color disappear from his face. He slowly turned to look at his mother. "Tell me," he said in a voice so cold I barely recognized it, "that you didn't actually do this." Margaret's confident smile vanished. Daniel stared at his mother as if he had never seen her before. "Tell me," he repeated, his voice low and shaking with anger, "that you didn't actually do this." Margaret swallowed. I don't know what you're talking about." The wedding coordinator glanced at me apologetically. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Daniel held out his hand. "The envelope." She handed him a thick white envelope that had been left at the reception desk just minutes earlier. "What is it?" I asked. Daniel opened it carefully. As he pulled out several sheets of paper, his expression hardened. He looked at his mother again. "You invited her?" Margaret looked away. "I thought she deserved to know." My stomach dropped. "Who?" Before anyone answered, the ballroom doors slowly opened. Every guest turned. A glamorous woman in an expensive black dress walked inside. "Je n'entendez will take into the programs that has been joined to the US. I'm looking for Daniel." The room exploded with whispers. Margaret stood a little straighter. "There she is." Daniel closed his eyes. "Oh, Mom." The woman looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry. I didn't know there was still a reception." Jessica stepped beside me. "Who is she?" Daniel sighed deeply. "My ex-fiancée." Gasps echoed across the ballroom. Margaret smiled as if she'd just won a game. "I thought everyone should meet the woman who almost became my daughter." The woman immediately frowned. "Margaret, that's not why you invited me. You said Daniel wanted closure." "I never said that." "Yes, you did." She reached into her purse and pulled out printed text messages. "I have every message." Daniel took them. His face turned white. Margaret had created a fake phone number using Daniel's name. For weeks, she had been pretending to be him. She had told his ex that he still had feelings for her. She convinced her that coming to the wedding would help everyone move on. The poor woman looked horrified. "I would never have come if I'd known." She turned toward me. "I'm so sorry. I honestly believed Daniel wanted me here." Daniel wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "I've never contacted her. We ended things years ago. I've been happy with Emily from the day we met." His ex nodded. "I know." She looked directly at Margaret. "I should have realized something was wrong." The guests weren't whispering anymore. They were openly staring at Margaret. She tried to laugh. "It was just a misunderstanding." "No," Daniel replied. "It was fraud and emotional manipulation." My father spoke up. "You forged messages?" Margaret crossed her arms. "I only wanted Daniel to remember what he gave up. I wanted him to have one last chance." Daniel couldn't believe what he was hearing. I married the woman I love. You tried to sabotage my wedding. Margaret's voice rose. I was protecting you. From what? From settling. She pointed directly at me again. She isn't good enough. That was the moment something inside me finally broke. Not into pieces, into clarity. For years, I had smiled, apologized, stayed quiet, earned promotions, helped family, bit my tongue. Tonight, I was finished. I walked slowly toward the microphone. No one stopped me. I faced every guest. I've spent 2 years trying to earn Margaret's approval. I smiled sadly. I baked for her. I organized charity events. I fixed her computer. I remembered every birthday. I apologized for things I never did. I looked directly at her. Do you know what I learned? Silence. You never wanted a daughter-in-law. You wanted someone your son would never choose. Several guests nodded. I continued. You've spent years telling everyone I wasn't successful enough. I reached into my bridal clutch. I wasn't planning to discuss money tonight. But since qualifications seem so important, I pulled out my phone. My company announced something this morning. The announcement had gone live during the ceremony. I hadn't even looked at it yet. I connected my phone to the ballroom projector. The company homepage appeared on the large screen. At the top was a press release. Emily Carter appointed Chief Financial Officer. The ballroom erupted. Jessica screamed. My parents burst into tears. My boss, who was sitting near the front, stood and began clapping. So that's why you kept checking your email, he laughed. I smiled. I wanted today to be about my marriage, not my career. Margaret stared at the screen. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. I wasn't finished. My compensation package became public this afternoon. Another slide appeared. The guests gasped again. My salary? My bonus? My equity shares? Daniel laughed softly. You've officially become richer than me. I think we'll survive. The room filled with genuine laughter. Margaret looked ready to faint. She had spent years calling me ordinary. Now everyone could see I had quietly built a remarkable career without ever bragging. Chloe suddenly stood. Money doesn't make someone classy. I smiled. You're absolutely right. But neither does humiliating a bride at her own wedding. Applause broke out. Then something unexpected happened. Daniel's uncle Robert walked to the front. He looked furious. I've listened to Margaret belittle people for 20 years. He turned toward the guests. Who's tired of pretending this behavior is acceptable? One by one, people stood. An aunt. 2 cousins. Family friends. Even Margaret's lifelong neighbor. Stories poured out. She mocked my divorce. She insulted my daughter. She called my husband a failure. She embarrassed us at Christmas. The dam had finally burst. Margaret looked around desperately. No. They're exaggerating. No, Mom, Daniel answered quietly. They're finally being honest. She turned to Chloe. Say something. Chloe hesitated. For the first time in her life, no one came to rescue her. Even she realized defending Margaret now would only expose herself. Margaret began crying. Real tears. I only wanted what was best. Daniel shook his head. You wanted control. They're different things. She reached for him. He stepped back. I love you because you're my mother. But after tonight, his voice cracked.
I don't like the person you've chosen to become.
The ballroom was completely silent again. Only now, the silence belonged to her. The wedding planner quietly restarted the music. People slowly returned to their tables. Margaret stood alone. No conversations. No sympathy. No allies. Eventually, she picked up her purse.
I suppose I'm not welcome anymore.
My father answered before anyone else could. You made that decision yourself. She walked toward the exit. Halfway there, she turned. Daniel. He didn't move.
I'm staying with my wife.
Margaret left. Chloe hurried after her. Neither of them came back. The strange thing was, the moment they left, the entire atmosphere changed. People laughed again. The dance floor filled. My boss raised his glass. To the strongest bride I've ever met. Everyone cheered. Daniel pulled me close. I'm sorry.
You have nothing to apologize for.
I should have stopped this years ago. I smiled. You stopped it tonight. We danced until midnight. The next morning, our story had already spread through social media. Several guests had posted about the unbelievable wedding speech. One video of Margaret's toast reached millions of views within days. People weren't mocking me. They were praising how calmly I handled the situation. Strangers sent messages saying they finally found the courage to stand up to toxic relatives. Then karma kept working. Margaret had served on the board of a local charity for over a decade. After several board members saw the video and learned about the fake messages she had sent, they asked for her resignation. The country club she'd always bragged about quietly removed her from its social committee. People who once laughed at her jokes suddenly stopped returning her calls. Reputation takes years to build. One reckless night can destroy it. As for Chloe, life became much harder once her mother's influence disappeared. Their parents had always paid her bills. Now Daniel refused to keep helping financially. You need to stand on your own. She wasn't happy. But for the first time, she had to face consequences instead of excuses. 6 months later, Daniel received a handwritten letter. Not a text, not an email. A real letter. It was from Margaret. She admitted that she'd spent so many years trying to control his future that she'd forgotten he was an adult capable of choosing his own happiness. She apologized to both of us, not because she lost friends, not because she lost status, but because she'd watched the wedding video over and over and finally saw my face when she gave her speech. She wrote, I saw someone who only ever wanted to belong to our family, and I realized I was the one who never deserved that kindness. I cried reading it. Forgiveness didn't happen overnight. Trust certainly didn't. But healing finally had a chance to begin. Today, 3 years later, life looks very different. I'm still the CFO of the company I love. Daniel's architectural firm has doubled in size. We bought a home together, not because anyone approved of us, but because we built a life together brick by brick. Our daughter recently took her first steps across our living room. Daniel laughed so hard he cried. Sometimes I think about that wedding toast. For years, I believed it was the worst moment of my life. Now I see it differently. It exposed every hidden truth in one single evening. It showed me who genuinely loved me. It showed Daniel the price of staying silent. It forced an entire family to confront behavior they'd excused for decades. Most importantly, it taught me something I'll never forget. The people who try hardest to make you feel small are often terrified. You'll discover your true worth. My mother-in-law wanted the world to remember me as the woman who wasn't good enough for her son. Instead, everyone remembers her as the woman who stood up to humiliate a bride and watched her own pride become the loudest thing to fall that night.